I think the stream is back up. Yeah, I think it is. Okay, yeah, I'm back. I got really hot. Like, I got really, really hot to such a degree where I was sweating bullets, and I'm like, why is this happening? Is it because it's hot? Is it me? Forgot to turn on that light. Um, was it the light that I was using? Yeah, I don't know. I got really like hot, and I was like, holy cow. Um, yeah, and I also wrote down the idea that I got. So yeah, I got stuck in the whole idea of what was I? Talking about male female dynamics, male female energies, the imbalance in people, how some people reject certain qualities of each side, and a little cherry pick, and then it creates this whole alchemic imbalances of things, which led me to think more about the cultural dynamic aspect of it, where because I would, yeah, I would largely assume that we've had at least 30 years of people who are offset in their balance, and we're currently watching like how that cycle ends, where some people choose to heal, some people don't, which is why I think that book is interesting, because it mentions that, where it's like, do you like, what is that which causes the healing process in us? um and the book makes a distinction where they describe, like, do you heal, and do you put yourself back together, or do you reject? Was it page 52, page 54? I don't even want to get yeah. And then I got stuck with using me as an example. And why I got stuck using me as an example, because right, I grew up in a single mom home, and I'd imagine that there are a lot of people who grew up in a single mom home, and it led me to think of where we are now culturally as people, and just to see the interplay dynamic of how all of this has played out. Only having exposure, or at least for me, right? I only had exposure from one side of of that energy that let's just say it made a lot of sense. Why, like, I don't know. The way I look at it is like, I'm all right because I'm Mexican. There's a lot of machismo males in my family, and always notice that when I go around them, they act differently towards me. I I don't want to say it's that aspect of, like, fem energy, blah blah blah. I don't think it's that. I think largely has to do with the fact that they view me as different because I'm a college dropout. Just because I went to college, they like classify me differently. It's probably the way I speak too, but I don't know. I act pretty fucking dumb when I'm with them. So I don't know. There's this whole thing of, like, I noticed that they act differently towards me, but it isn't just them. It's any time I've noticed that, at least when I was growing up, as a kid, they would look at me a little different, because, and then they would treat me a little different compared to their boys. I don't know. I just started thinking about all those instances, and I was just really stuck in that thought. But if that's me, then I can only imagine what other people are going through. Because I don't know. With the way I was writing about 3 weeks ago, and what I was writing about, I like writing about trends. I like writing about what currently is going on culturally. And something that I've noticed is, or at least that's come more into question, and at least in the YouTube algorithms and all this other stuff, was kind of stuff that was, those were seeds that were first planted, at least from what I saw, during 2018, 2017. And I think it was with Jordan Peterson. And yeah, it was aspects of the social contract, um, and the dynamics between male and female. Um, at least at that time, that sort of rhetoric didn't catch much play, but now it's catching a lot more play, and I'm seeing it become very prevalent in like social media platforms and all this other shit. The reason why I notice these trends is because there's always hidden truth in any of the things that trend, because there's money being put into establishing a narrative. Anytime you have like influencers or speaking heads bringing light or directing attention towards certain rhetorics or certain speech patterns, there's reason for it. And it's usually because they're trying to obfuscate something. It's like, we don't want you to address these issues. We don't want you to recognize any of the things that are going on in this thing. Like, avoid it. Don't pay attention to it. And what I think is the point of contention in this space currently with I don't know what you want to call it, like toxic masculinity, toxic femininity, and that whole red pill aspect of things, right? The red pill for me means like, hey, motherfucker, conspiracies times. We about to learn some shit. Now it's like conspiracy time. Now I gotta teach you how to be a man. Like, what the? Where are we? Like, what happened? Like, what the fuck? That's where all this happened. Oh, whatever. Point is, culturally, something's happened, and there's a lot of money being put. And the reason why I say there's a lot of money is that there's a lot of valuable people bringing light to an issue. That's a generation of some sort of value, or eyeballs get put on it. Eyeballs is a lot of money when you kind of put it two and two together, marketing, etc. Here goes my scatterbrain again. Where was I going with this? Alchemizing People. Yeah, largely being bred under current circumstances. Watching how people are, obfuscation of the truth with what's going on culturally between the social contract and Jordan Peterson. Men, women, blah 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 blah. So when you get into the occult or the deep state, or I don't know, the hidden hand, the way I look at it is there's a goal, there is an agenda, and that is to reduce the amount of people, right? That is to quell the amount of reproduction that occurs. And I think it's funny that that's a current issue when they blamed a specific group of people in history for having that sort of philosophy, and the Catholic Church made sure to eradicate every single one of them. And the last dude that they eradicated, who supposedly, right, this is all supposedlies, because the only authority that ever wrote of the writings of these people were the Catholic Church themselves, at a time where it was okay to frame people. So take it as you will. But very interesting to see the rhetoric of, we shouldn't reproduce, this and that. And I'm like, I don't know, that falls under the agenda of a very peculiar group of special interest. So I don't really align with that philosophy, but we see aspects of it infiltrate the reality, right? With Planned Parenthood, Roe v. Wade. And it's just like, I don't know. Now I'm getting still more stuck on like, I want to write it all down, but I can't. And alchemizing people. Okay. Did it fix it? Yeah, well, okay. I fixed it. About a whole, I had to, rush to pause the thing because I did not want to speak a bunch of Spanish. That would have been incomprehensible. Um, With Alchemizing People, yeah, the original thought process that I got stuck on was viewing my certain set of conditions and how I grew up life, and then applying it in the sense of how would that play out in terms of the playing field that we currently see. So, it gets back to the checkerboard floor, where I think it was Stalin who coined the term useful idiot, right? Where you teach people where you just give people enough information to act out their life in a particular way, and they'll just fight for you because their belief system has been centered around a very specific way that they'll just defend you blindly. So it's kind of like reminds me of a video that I don't even know if I posted it anywhere, where it was somebody asking somebody questions of like historical facts, and it's like, who who abolished slavery, right? The Democrats or Republicans? And it was just a bunch of questions that were asked in relation to slavery, voting rights, and all these other things. The person who was asked was a black man. He answered every single question and said Democrats. But historically, it was actually the Republican Party that, essentially overturned all of the draconian laws that were established. And it's like that's how blind people are, that they would assume that it's the Democrats because some form of authority told them. And usually it's because they've set up these false paradigms of, I don't know. It's why I still find it difficult to articulate what I'm trying to say, where because I grew up with a single mom who just walked in here to get something. um there's like this defense mechanism that I used to have, right? Because I wanted to tie it back into like when I would hang around other machismos, they would look at me and interact with me very differently. But it was because now that I'm older, I'm understanding that it's because they knew that I was from. They knew that because I was more sensitive, right? Because I grew up around a bunch of females, that if they spoke to me like they spoke to their boys, they feared me reacting a certain way. And it's kind of fucked up for me to say this, but like I really do think that to a large degree, a lot of people in America are under those circumstances where they grew up with a single mom, and they create these notions in their head and associate certain behaviors, mimic other behaviors, and then it perpetuates the cycle of just never ending suffering. Just never ending suffering. And something that I think is very interesting, because the only place I've ever seen speak about ending cycles of trauma are very few people. Very, very few people. And it's kind of funny because one side of the people that I do know are like the Jordan Peterson types, and then the other side that I've heard talk about ending generational trauma, ending cycles that we live through, are tarot readers. So it's like this very weird space where like, hey, there's this very serious topic, but the only people talking about it are these very two different extremes. And I don't know, I find it interesting. But why would a tarot reader be talking about ending generational trauma? Because they understand life is cycles. And it also depends on the reader that you have, because there is a lot to learn from like esoteric knowledge, because again, a lot of this hidden knowledge was just stuff that people either saw in natural life, or it was something learned in the original conception of Christianity. Because historically, at least from what I understand, when Christianity was initially established, it was a practice of word through mouth. So that's why they would take apprentices and teach them the Bible from beginning to end, and it would be more a thing of memorization. So because writing wasn't a thing. People also didn't know how to read, so the way that they tackled these sort of things was very different. That's why there isn't a lot of early Christian text work, and I think, at least rhetorically, what we learned from the Smithsonian and what we learned from all these archaeologists is one of the oldest forms of text to be found on the Bible are the Nag Hammadi, and I think they're like dated to like 300 AD. I don't know. I'm just saying that all that gets contentious, as usually with anything else. But, getting back to the idea of, I'm not too sure how we build up how our view of the world is largely shaped by what we learn, and that alchemizes us to some degree. It makes people like sleeper cells. That's why I got so stuck, and I had to end the stream because I was just like, whoa, this is like a weird pseudo way of creating like these sleeper cell soldiers that, like, at the moment of hearing like any of the trigger words or any of the meaningful rhetoric that they should respond to, the activated, must destroy, destroy Chad. No, I'm joking. I consider myself a soy boy. No, I'm joking. Being silly, not a thing I should do right now. Yeah, I'm still getting stuck on like alchemizing. Just how funny it is that like we like to view the world in such a very definitive way with science, but yet psychology, something considered a pseudoscience, is like that's like the bleeding, like you're bleeding two different sides of, like, if you know anything about was it Carl Jung? I don't think so. He was somebody that explored the subconscious, right? Can't remember too well. No, I don't think it was him, but it's somebody that was associating like aspects of the subconscious mind and its relation to the unseen world. I think it was an artist. He did like a series of paintings. I really need to brush up on my occult knowledge. I've been too stuck on like researching like anything that relates to me figuring out how Jesuits relate to this environmentalist movement. That's where I've been stuck on. Yeah, institutions, educational institutions, the funding of scholarships, da 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 da. I can get into it if I want to, but I don't want to. All right, that is a form of one of the ways that our country has been alchemized is creating and establishing these form factor rules where science should be conducted in this way, how one should act in this way, in doing this, speaking this way, in writing this way. We created these definitive avenues of how things should be. And one of them is college. And I've talked about this in I think graduation to the class of 2022, where it's just like, yeah, good luck, like all of you have graduated, but nobody talks about how like all of you have been coerced into signing loans, and that's something that happens here in America, where you essentially, right, every year when a class graduates, they sit them all down and they tell them fill out these forms and apply to all of these colleges, essentially in a forced, coerced way, forcing each and every single student to fill out applications to FAFSA, which is the federal student thing. They force them to take SATs. Right? Every single person has to go through this. It's like a weird way of like social pressure, like, yeah, go to college, take all this debt. Come on, kid. Yeah. Like, oh my. And right, if you want to deviate from doing so, everyone else has been alchemized in such a way where, what do you mean you don't want to go? That's what everyone else does. You should really go. Like, creates these definitives where life must be so. I always found that very unnatural. Mm. Being very stuck on alchemizing. What else could I talk about? Mm. Yeah, how I come off as very effeminate. It's like that's something that's bugged the living fuck out of me my whole life. Like dead ass. Where I guess like one of the things that I remember is I was in an after school program in high school, and what were we doing? I think I was just in the film class, right? Like school was ending. I don't think I had a program that day, and I was hanging out with the film teacher, Mr. Aguado. Funny last name, by the way, Mr. Aguado, because that just means like I don't even know how to describe it. Um, yeah, we were in this class. This chick who is sitting not across from me, but to the side of me, is looking at me, and she's like, "Are you gay?" And I'm like, "No." Like, it threw me off. I was like 17 at the time. I was like, "The fuck?" Like, no, like currently right now I even have a girlfriend. Like that shit was so weird. And she's like, "Oh, you don't have to lie." Like it was so weird that even the teacher was kind of like, "Yeah, you kind of do tend to act a certain kind of way." And I'm like, "What the fuck, dude?" Like it's not that it's something that followed me everywhere. It's just it was something enough that I knew that I was like, you know, when I got asked those questions, I don't know, thinking about it now, I understand that, oh, it's because of the environment that I was in and the environment I grew up in. But paying closer attention to that was just very interesting now, fully knowing how everything's progressed. How I don't know. I don't want to attach percentages to like rioters, Antifa, BLMers, any political activist group because I'm like, if we were to look at demographics and if we were to actually like look into why certain people are predispositioned to the way they are, I think a lot of information would be very telling in why these people believe what they believe in. And all right, so like because I have a single mom, people would always assume that I hated my dad or I never knew him. And I would have to explain to him it's actually neither of those because like I don't have any animosity towards him, right? That's what I'm trying to get to. And the reason why that's important is because everybody I've ever spoken to who hates Trump has deeply rooted issues against father figures. Let me say that one more time. Everyone that I know, or at least have spoken to, who has a problem with Trump has deeply rooted issues with fatherhood or the idea of what a dad is, or like just masculine energy, whatever you want to call it. Like, I don't know where it stems from. I'm not saying like I'm not trying to insinuate anything. It was just something that I noticed that every single person I've ever debated, spoke to about Trump had these like weird pseudoscience, like this weird pseudo way of like attaching aspect of their dad to him and associating him as the same person, a shyster, this, a that. And I actually never verbalized it to anybody, but it was a reoccurring theme where I saw it because they were always attaching just the same way that when Hillary Clinton ran for president, people would say, "Oh, she's just like my grandma." People would look at Trump and be like, "Oh, fuck that asshole, just like my dad." At least that's the way I interpret it. Nobody actually ever said that at all to me, or I never heard that. I just internalized it that way because I'm like, if I hated my dad, I could very easily fall into these patterns. And I would say a lot of my early life was me rejecting masculine energy. Like I can wholeheartedly say that, and that's what really threw me back like a while ago. And I guess that's why I got hot because I was like, oh, this is weird, right? Getting caught like feeling something, being live, and just having one person watching. I was like, oh, I'm feeling hella weird right now, and I'm getting hot. I don't have anything to drink. Like when I'm internalizing something, I like like internalizing it, you know, and then I get to handle it and then talk it out loud. Very good at being quick with it, but ooh, I got hot. Um, yeah, alchemizing feminine energy. I just think we fall into some very interesting troubling times where a lot of it was the off put of masculine and feminine. And to some degree, I'm not saying that. You know what I will say? People can do whatever they want. That's just what it is. Especially in America where I live, that's just what it is. You could do whatever the fuck you want and nobody will tell you anything or otherwise. But in such, because of so, because you can do whatever you want here in this country, like, I don't really think traditional roles mean anything. I think that traditional roles is just a social contract that men and females join into, fully knowing and not fully knowing. I think now more than ever, we have a lot of people who are getting into unions who don't really fully understand what that pact would entail. And because they don't know what that is, or because they view it a completely different way, gold diggers, you know what I mean? Like, some people are just using this as a facet or as a form of extension of things they can do in their life and be protected or do legally. There's a funny video that came to my mind where it's Dr. Umar and he's all like, "Why do we need white man paperwork?" And like, you know, he's one of those black brothers and he's like super into it. But it's like, you know, it brings up a good point. Like, why do we need paperwork to finalize marriage when this is supposed to be like a strictly religious institutional thing? Taxes, baby. Taxes. Always involves the money, which goes back into alchemizing people. Because a divorce is a very, I don't want to say triggering, but being put under those circumstances would cause so much distress emotionally. Like, I'm like, bro, I wouldn't. Someone's gonna walk away hurt from that sort of situation, is what I'm saying. But if you're, you know, a group of evil people trying to destroy a country, that would be one of the easiest ways to destroy men. Because, you know, I could say this definitively. I really do. I don't know why I wanted to make it sound that way. I believe that the group of people who get to dictate the course of actions of governments and or entities, corporations, right? Those, that kind of class of people, the oligarchs, the ecclesiastical, whatever you want to call them. I largely tend to believe that they understand humans or humanity as a form of animal, because to them they view us repeating cycles and repeating patterns, and right, the more you zoom out, the more you just start seeing the similarities between groups, between people. And if you understood these dynamics, and you know, if you were afraid of ever getting toppled over, if you were afraid of competition, if you were afraid of actual competitors competing against your company, your brand. The reason why I'm wording it like this is because the oligarchs, the top of the pyramid, would much rather buy you out for your invention, would much rather buy you out for your idea than actually pay you for what you're worth. And a lot of it comes down to they don't want to see your family prosper. They'd much rather just cash you out, let you self-destroy yourself, and never amass too much. And I've seen this pattern just repeat itself, right? Like, I think you can even pull some instances where they've purposefully gone after certain families just to knock them off from being competition against them. This might be historically a bit too old, but the Mendez or the Martinez family from Texas, basically like they were forced into a situation where they had to marry one of the daughters to like a slave plantation owner, because slave plantations basically created like a psyop in Texas to take over Texas ranching, because it became very problematic that Texas wanted neutrality at a time where the South and the North were not getting along very well. So all these southern plantation owners created a bunch of strife and division between the Spaniards and the Americans that were living with one another, etc., etc. Psychological operations, manipulation of will, alchemizing people and their expectations, thus allowing for, you know, kind of slave plantation owners to enter Texas and just take over all of ranching as it was at that time. Because at the time that I'm speaking of, Texas was a bit of an independent state, but they did consider themselves a part of America with independence. And the reason why they were allowed that sort of autonomy is because Texas was originally a creation of all of the outcasts, all of the people that were either banished or just people who were fed up with the Spanish rule of Mexico at that time. History with Ramirez. Like, I am not. I don't even know. Really good lemonade. I squeeze my own juice. I. What else? Alchemizing People. Yeah. I don't know. How many more minutes? How much minutes? Oh, I got them 22s. 22s. Yeah, 2 2. 2 2 2 2. Yeah, actually, I'm just gonna end this with pulling like a card. So, as the whole discussion is about alchemy and alchemization, I tend to believe that alchemizing in a weird form factor is just like watching um a catalyst interact with something that it can catalyze. Uh, so in a weird way, when I got this this deck of cards, this oracle deck, um, it set the conditions forth to catalyze me into further researching. I guess when I got this deck of cards, the only thing it propelled me to was understanding uh cults. Cults in the sense of not like drink the Kool-Aid, man, more like covens, circle. I want to say circles, but it's just like, just know when I say circle, what I really mean is it's like a group of witches. Some of them call themselves circles, some of them call themselves tribes, clans. It's like a variety of different names. It usually depends on like the person who created the covenant. Um, but I tend not to believe the modern ones. Like if you can find, well, I was about to say if you can find them on the internet, I wouldn't trust it. But then again, like what was it, Pizza Planet or Ping Pong Comet Pizza, whatever. Like you know who James Alefantis is, you would know what I'm talking about. You would know that this dude was dealing with very dark woo woo, and you would know that some of the clients he had who were well known and well established woo woo practitioners. I was about to say, right, like they would offer their services on the internet. So I'm just kind of like, yeah, I was about to say like you shouldn't really believe anything on the internet. And I'm like, well, here I am. And so much has happened since then. Like even in February, like there were some events that led, power moment. February. thought about a lot of things, but in that process, I found a lot of other YouTube channels, and just I'm like, all right, it's weird for me to go through certain events and for me to see videos explaining other things, and then kind of like what I'm going through to the line, and I'm like, either there's like some weird person on like a DARPA bot who's like either fucking with me or I don't know. I don't know. Very interesting things. Yeah, kind of like Henry M or Henry F Mayfield. Either way. Just the way I discovered that name was interesting too. 23. I know this card very well. But I don't know. I would name the card, but at the same time I wouldn't name the card because it all depends on what you know about the Shem. I don't know. I tend to believe it because it's like, hey, Christians believe it, Muslims believe it, and the Jews believe it. And I'm not talking about the Canaanites. I'm talking about real Jewish people. So yeah, put respect in my mouth because you can't just name these angels all willy nilly. Yeah, pull the angel card 23 out. I don't know what else to say. Just besides that was really weird that like towards the first stream I got really hot at the end of that and I was like, why do I feel like I'm burning up? I feel like I'm sweating bullets, and I was. Yeah, may all come into. Why can't I? 27. But then why does the? That's strange. That's like a 10-minute difference. Anyway. Yeah, Jose Ramirez, Frogbear.zil. Probably won't do anything tonight. Cause I go to bed early. Yeah, hopefully everyone experiences good times. Hopefully this cycle comes to a close. And if you don't know what I'm making a reference to, I'm making a reference to the original financial system. People forget the original financial system was created on Jekyll's Island, which was a burial site for, supposedly, right? This is a supposed myth. The myth was that the village that lived on this island were original Canaanite blood sacrificing a group of people that came from very ancient times. They weren't sure how they survived, but when whoever bought that island discovered them, murdered all of the inhabitants, then built Jekyll Island on top of them, and just built houses, just built all this nice stuff on top of this property. And on the main property, supposedly, where the altar was, that's where they had the meeting for the creation of the financial system that we currently have. And you know, I'm somebody that roots for that whole system of fall because of Babylonian magic, Canaanite magic. I don't know what you want to call it. Some people would call it Phoenician magic. I just, you know, with everything that these people do, it's always in accordance to a very specific agenda. And it's a very specific. I don't know how to explain it. Like they're not good people. They just want the worst for everything. So a good example of this would be like electricity. With them trying to use Bitcoin and Ethereum as forms of cryptocurrencies, right? The network, and them trying to use electric vehicles around the world, or at least in this country, like 60 to 80% of the electricity that's used in America is already coming from unclean sources like coal, fuel. Like, this makes no sense to use electricity when the majority of our electricity is created using these methods that aren't safe for the environment. And so I get into the whole thing of this is why they would want Bitcoin and Ethereum, because of the energy guzzling effect that they have. And then you get into the whole thing of carbon credits and this and that, and it's like this is the age-old trick. The reason why we didn't use Nikola Tesla's electricity was mainly because you can't put a meter on it. If I can't put a meter on it, how am I going to charge you extra? So this whole thing of like carbon credits and all this is just the same reason why they destroyed the families, same reason why they alchemize us to be very divided amongst one another. It's purely for the purpose of division, purely for the purpose of making sure that, you know, by a large degree we're suppressed. Just very interesting times we're living in. So I don't tend to be black-pilled. Actually, that's what I'm going to name my next stream. Black pill people are the worst. I absolutely detest people who are always in the spectrum of it's over, we're doomed, this and that. And I'm like, by your definition of doomed, by your definition of destroyed, like, yeah. But when you look at the things that are occurring and the things that are happening and the way the direction is going, I tend to be a lot more hopeful. Say this, but sometimes watching the stuff I watch about with just the social paradigm and how it's developing between men and women, I get really discouraged sometimes. You know, I get so discouraged sometimes that the only way, nah, I shouldn't. You know what I mean? Like, I'm so discouraged with the interplay between men and women. Like, it's like, where did this occur? Like, I started with this whole idea of like, this must have happened somewhere, because this also kind of falls into the agenda, you know, depopulation, the Georgia Guidestones that recently just blew up. I don't know. I'm stuck in like a whole bunch of other dumb shit. Either way, dude, I already did 50 minutes. High five to me, and high five to you too. Yeah, Jose Ramirez, Frogbear.zo. Prometo no hablar el español. Yo puedo hablar español muy malo y yo también puedo hablar español muy bueno.